You know there's a hidden crisis playing out right now in a metal that powers pretty much every part of our modern industrial world. And the shockwaves, well, they're really just getting started.
So let me ask you this. What if I told you that a single specific metal is absolutely critical for your smartphone, for your car, and even for national defense? And what if its entire global supply chain was suddenly breaking down?
Well, we're talking about tungsten, and its properties are just remarkable. I mean, its hardness is second only to a diamond, and it has the highest melting point of any metal on the planet. These characteristics make it completely indispensable. It's really the unseen backbone of global manufacturing. We're talking everything from the cutting tools that build engines to the high-strength alloys used in aerospace.
But that backbone, that critical piece of the puzzle, is under some serious strain. The global supply chain is fracturing, and that affects literally everyone. So what on earth is going on?
All right, to really get this crisis, we first have to look at the intense pressure points that are pushing this market toward a boiling point.
The first major problem is concentration. You see, the vast majority of the world's tungsten supply, it comes from just a handful of players, with China being the dominant force by far. Now, this makes the entire global market incredibly vulnerable. A disruption in just one or two places can throw the whole thing into chaos. And that vulnerability is showing up in the price right now. Over in Europe, the cost of APT, that's ammonium paratungstate, a key chemical for making tungsten products, it's seeing weekly spikes of $50 per metric ton unit. Believe me, for a heavy industrial commodity, that is a frantic pace of increase.
And it gets even more dramatic when you look at the recycling market. In India, which is a critical hub for tungsten scrap, prices have just skyrocketed by over 25% in a single week. This isn't just a simple price adjustment. This signals real panic setting into the market.
This desperation has led to some pretty extreme deals. We're seeing reports of buyers paying over $3,000 per metric ton unit on the spot market just to get their hands on immediate supply. Now, this is way above normal contract prices, and it just shows you how desperate some manufacturers have become.
And this isn't just our take. It's being confirmed directly by market analysts at SMM. They're noting that the power has completely flipped. The people who actually hold the physical material, they're in control now. They are calling the shots.
But what's fascinating here is that this is a tale of two completely different markets. While the West is in an absolute frenzy, just scrambling to secure material, China's domestic market is the total opposite. Over there, they're seeing rational price corrections and a much more cautious kind of wait-and-see approach. And that gap, it's getting wider every single week.
So this is the crucial question, right? How does a price spike at a port in Rotterdam or in a scrapyard in India actually impact global industry and, potentially you?
Well, it's not just about price anymore. This has become a full-blown inventory crisis. Manufacturers in Europe and America are literally running out of stock. They can't plan production because their raw material supply is just gone. And that forces them right back into that panicked spot market we just talked about.
This scarcity kicks off a really clear chain reaction. It all starts at the source, the mines and the recyclers. This leads to big price hikes for the intermediate products. Then, component makers get their profit margins squeezed, and they have no choice but to pass those higher costs down the line to major industries like automotive and aerospace. I mean, just think about the carbide drill bits that shape an engine block, or the super strong alloys in a jet turbine. The costs for those are all going up, which could very well mean production delays or higher prices for things like new cars and flights.
And this really brings us to the big picture. Market watchers are basically concluding that this isn't some temporary blip. We are witnessing a fundamental structural shift. The old assumption of cheap, readily available tungsten, that seems to be over.
So now we have to turn to the epicenter of this massive shift, China. For decades, they have been the world's largest producer and supplier of tungsten. But that is changing, and it's changing fast.
Look, this slide, it tells the whole story in just 3 lines. In just 1 year, China's tungsten exports have plummeted by nearly 28%. At the same time, their imports of raw tungsten ore have surged by over 150%. The result? They've flipped. They've gone from being a net exporter to a net importer. For the global market, this is a seismic event.
So why the huge reversal? Well, it's a mix of factors. China has put stricter export controls on strategic materials. Their own domestic ore supply is getting tighter. And then there are the massive logistical delays. It can take 3 to 4 months just to get cargo from China to Europe, which adds this huge layer of uncertainty to everything.
And look, this didn't happen overnight, but it did happen incredibly quickly.
The new export controls kicked in early last year. Just about 12 months later, official data confirmed the complete reversal. China is now keeping its tungsten for itself and actually importing more from others.
So, with the entire market being reshaped, where do we go from here? The frantic search for stability and for new sources of supply is officially on.
It looks like there are 4 key pathways forward. First, we have to massively ramp up recycling. Second, companies need to diversify their sourcing away from any single country. Third, there needs to be heavy investment in exploring for new tungsten deposits. And finally, innovation, finding alternative materials or just learning to use tungsten more efficiently. Altogether, these are the strategies that could build a more resilient supply chain for the future.
The single most crucial takeaway from all of this is that the world's perception of tungsten has fundamentally changed. It's no longer just another industrial commodity you can buy and sell by the ton. It is now being treated as a vital strategic asset, absolutely essential for economic and national security.
And this leaves us with a critical question. In this new era, as the entire market reshapes itself, which companies and which countries are going to be agile enough to innovate and secure their supply? And who is going to be left vulnerable and left behind?
Make no mistake, the tungsten market is undergoing a once-in-a-generation shift. And for global industry, understanding that change early, well, that's the only way to stay ahead.
Subscribe for more of these global industry insights, and you can check the link in the description for a much deeper breakdown of this topic.